we should start with you introducing yourself with name and what you do.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. I'm Paul Hacker. I studied law and finance. I've worked in big companies, and for the last 25 years, I've been an entrepreneur. I've been on the startup team 3 times. I've been at technology companies. I've had 2 exits. I've worked as a venture capitalist, and now I'm semi-retired, and I have made some angel investments and help advise young companies.
Thank you for your introduction. What keeps you up at night?
Well, these days, you know, I admit, like many people, I'm suffering some anxiety about the COVID-19 issue. And so generally, that doesn't necessarily keep me up at night, but that bothers me. So sometimes one doesn't sleep so well. And I have different connections with mainly 4 startups in different parts of the world. And so some of their problems keep me up at night.
So how you see the situation of people trying to make things certain which are not?
I mean, again, to be honest, I'm grappling with that point. I think from a personal point of view, there's 2 issues. There's a personal side, I guess, and a business side. Well, to me, there's a difference between those 2. So personally, I'm lucky. I've got a great wife, and so I guess we can talk openly about what concerns us and uncertainty, and you know how one can plan or how one cannot plan. And so, in that way, personally, I suppose I'm sharing the burden. Personally, also, over the years, actually for other reasons, I've been very interested in psychology, and I've studied neuro-linguistic programming. So NLP is almost a form of, not meditation, but it's a form of self-calming that I think I can use. So personally, in summary, it's a great relationship, which I'm lucky, and it's a form of self-help, in my case from NLP. And talking to friends, I think different people have different ways of self-help. From a business point of view, I think the short answer is what's helped me, and I've seen help other people, is mentoring. So if one's able to talk, it's very different. Businesses, of course, have a huge problem planning or worrying about survival, or trying, you know, the whole basis of business planning is to fix some absolute points and take a line of sight or a trajectory off those points. And now one can't do that because one doesn't know. Or at least one didn't when the pandemic started. Maybe one knows a bit more now. So I've seen in myself, and also in other entrepreneurs, that mentoring, finding somebody, doesn't matter if they know more than you or not, but taking something outside your company or your normal group or your team and talking to somebody completely outside that for other reasons you trust or you look up to, might not give you absolute answers, but it's a clearing effect to have to think through what you want to talk about and spell it out to somebody else. So there's that. And then I think there's other sort of psychological support systems. It's not true that you can't plan. What I think it actually means is in this time in business, you have to plan much more often and against continuing changing variables. It's not true that you can't plan. You can create, you are able to create your own certainties, perhaps in shorter periods or on different assumptions. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. But what I'm wondering actually is, do you have something like a mental model that you can use in these times, or do you just say, I will just periodically, the frequency that I do the planning, I will just up that and go over all the variables and look what changed and then try to accommodate that in my planning?
For me, how I'm trying to deal with the stress and anxiety, I am trying, one way of handling it is I'm trying to separate personal issues from business issues. So that's one step. So rather, I've seen that in other people, rather than just worry about the pandemic in terms of everything it does, I'm splitting it in what are personal issues or family issues versus what are business issues. So that's one way. Second way, yeah, there's a sort of mental frame, which is what I prefer to, the neuro-linguistic programming thing, that you could try and sequence thought. For the business planning stuff, yeah, I don't think there's any real answer. It depends on the business. It depends. So, you know, I've seen some businesses, or I'm involved with some businesses, where they're doing an old-fashioned sort of Gantt chart of, you know, how do I get from here to there and what are the decision points? Because they feel by sketching out a sort of decision tree, it helps get some certainty into an uncertain world. Many other companies are doing planning real time and making it more democratic by having a virtual company stand-up every morning or every evening. And management are actually saying this is now, we started having a daily management stand-up because everybody's working at home and we want to have a sense of community and keep some culture between us all. And I suppose ensure that objectives are being worked on and people are working. So that was an original idea that many companies are doing remote stand-ups daily. But what's happened in many cases I've observed, that they've evolved into almost a real-time planning session. So we started off thinking, oh, we're all working at home, we better all meet every morning on Zoom for morale or together reasons. And now we're 3 months later, without anybody taking a specific decision, the form of management's changed. It's not the people at the top are deciding. Everybody meets because they're meeting, because they're all working from home. But what they've started, they've got used to this. They've got used to this. So right now what they're talking about is the business challenges, or what do you think we should do next week? Or how do we save 50,000? Or how do we close that order? Or how do we make the software work? Or how shall we do that proposal? So it's had the side effect that planning's become a more real-time event, and it's become more democratic.
What are your thoughts about it? Because this sounds more like the management team got more diverse.
Well, remember, June, I'm almost exclusively working with startups, right? I mean,
yeah.
So a day in my week is working with up to 4 startups that I've invested in, or that I have a connection with, or in one case that I'm mentoring. So they are startups. So they're typically employing the smallest one's employing about 10 people, the biggest one's employing about 150 people. But they are startups. So, and they're all in technology. So they always were, to a certain extent, slightly unstructured. But so that's a context. But to your point, I don't think anybody ever took a management. I mean, there's the owners, the CEO, managers. I don't think anybody in any case actually took a decision, we'll change how we do management. It's an interesting observation. It just happened. It's just as a secondary effect of having a stand-up and people working it from home, you meet every day. So if I put it simply, now the boss is meeting his staff more often. It's equalized. There always were some people working out of office and some people working in office. There used to be a system where there were board meetings once a month, management meetings once a week, and staff meetings at the end of the month or whatever. And all that's got torn up. No one decided, it just did change. So maybe I'm giving a long answer to your question. So the way of management is the managers are leading the meeting perhaps, good morning, here's a stand up. Please tell us your point, Chris. Please tell us your point, Mary. What about this? So there's still leadership, but I'm merely making the point on managing the unknown. It becomes an open democratic topic. So that, I suppose that's the point. A very different system.
Okay. Just the question was if you like it better or you think it's worse.
Yeah, it's a democratized form of decision making. It's happening naturally. It's happening without status or ego to us. Of course, you still rely on people who are on this distributed Zoom meeting about, you know, are they extrovert or introvert or shy or loud? But everybody's feeling very involved. So a huge positive side effect is that probably what came as a, well, not probably, definitely, this came as a huge shock because people had to work from home. And this came as a method of managing that change, has morphed in, has changed, has evolved into a completely different form of management because as a side effect of the uncertainty. So for me, that's almost one of the biggest takeaways about how does one handle uncertainty. And then there's also some, it's people thought, oh, company cultures might collapse to a certain extent because of work from home. And in some ways, the reverse has happened because of this effort to compensate from everybody working from home. There's a discipline. We will meet every morning at 9 o'clock. So everybody's level, right? Everybody's in it, and it becomes natural to talk about worries and concerns and uncertainties.
The regular problem is that there's a big gap between the decision and the decision makers. They get more and more disconnected from reality, and they take a very long time to react, and that's when uncertainty actually really bites you. It's how I understand it.
Yes, well, yeah, there might be some of that. I mean, of course, not all management decisions are being taken in these stand-ups. I don't mean that. I mean, there's some hard decisions about reducing costs or what to do about the, you know, so of course, I'm not suggesting every decision is taken in this forum. But in the companies I see, in the network I speak to, one could say that as a generally, not just because of this point I'm making, but generally, because of the pressure to deal with uncertainty, the quality of decision making has gone up, or the attempt to do better decisions, it's had to go up.
So as I experience it, like what is one thing which is certain, that things are uncertain, and it's anyway life changes the whole time. And if you want to organize something, you have to deal with failures. You have to allow failures, and because they're going to happen anyway, but you have to find a way that they happen in a way they don't kill you, basically. So fail quickly, try things quickly, so that they're still at the stage where you notice that something's going wrong, which is not huge.
Yes, you're minimizing. You're having to minimize the effect of failures or even the effect of disappointments. That's right. Yeah.
Actually, what I was wondering is, when you're working now with startups or in your career of working with startups, isn't that working in a startup always dealing with uncertainty? So it shouldn't be such a big change, because when you're a startup, you don't know yet if you're going to be successful. You don't know yet if you find your market fit. You don't know if you find your customers and so on.
No, sure, that's a great point. Somebody did say to me, somebody in America said to me, the distance between a normal startup life and this COVID-19 life is much less of a distance than it is from a big company. Because so it's your point, you know, the distance, of course there's a distance, but yeah, I think the issue, so yes, people in a startup generally are used to more uncertainty. Otherwise they wouldn't create a startup, or they wouldn't work in a startup. as you say, they don't know. There is always some concern. Will the company run out of money? Or all the things you said. But of course, the uncertainty posed by COVID is much bigger. Having a startup, you might be uncertain you feel uncertain in a certain world. Now you feel uncertain in an uncertain world. So, well, it's true. You know, people can leave. I've done it myself when I was a co-founder. You'd leave the stress of a startup and go to the gym or a restaurant or to see some friends. So you kind of step out of your risky bubble, and there'd be a contrast of relative calm. Of course, that's not there now, but still, June's point's a great point. Yes, startups live in an uncertain world. It's just the degree of uncertainty and the risks are pretty different now, right?
Important is dealing with uncertainty in your job.
Uncertainty about life, really not really much different now than it was 1 or 2 years ago. I mean, I could have walked out in Tessenderplatz and got hit by a car, right? Or anything could have happened. It's just that in news terms and in apparent risk terms, the risks are bigger. But actually, there always were risks. So the issue is, it's not so much uncertainty. To me, it comes to how you think. How you think. And the minute you take any form of positive action, you're going to think differently about something.
Thank you for this great point. What do you think has these times taught us? Or what do you think uncertainty teaches us?
Well, there's different levels. I don't want to sound cliche, but clearly the world wasn't as far. There was something wrong with the world, right? So I'm not trying to be political or anything, but there was something fundamentally wrong. I mean, we have achieved, compared to animals, we've achieved this apparent great power and wealth and sophistication. And then this happens. It gets through all the warning systems. We've clearly all learnt there's something that we weren't as, if I can put it this way, we were not as civilized, or whatever that means. We were not that elevated. The world wasn't clever. There was something wrong. And that means that the systems we had, which many people suspected, but the systems we had were wrong. The priorities were completely wrong. But this just came out from the side and has pressure tested almost every aspect of the world. It's pressure tested the economy, it's pressure tested the health systems, it's pressure tested governments, it's pressure tested communications. So I haven't fully digested the effect of that. But in simple terms, it's taught us there was something very wrong.
Then I would like to ask the last question. Do you have a special advice for us entrepreneurs, how to act or react in these times?
Yeah, absolutely. Get a mentor.
Get a mentor.
One or more. It's absolutely, it's a huge advice. It's not big advice, it's huge advice. And a mentor is misunderstood. It is not necessarily somebody who knows more than you about a subject. It's not that. It is the act of finding somebody that you can trust and that you can talk to. It'll take a huge amount of pressure away, because the act of arranging, the act of going to find a mentor, arranging the session, discussing how are we going to have the session, what's the start, the middle, the end, how will I react, right. So one aspect of that is, to most entrepreneurs, it's different. It has a cadence. I don't want to overuse the word, but it starts looking like a new normal. You can plan it, you can hang hope on it, and you have to distill. When most people get stressed, including myself, what's happening is we can't think rationally. We're trying to think of everything. Oh, I don't feel well. I'm worried about my health. I might run out of money. My business might go bankrupt. I have a responsibility to 15 staff. I lost that contract. The bank want me to phone them. And, you know, it's this hectic, that's what psychology calls this hectic mixing up of more and more points, not in a sequence. And the minute you have a mentor, at least what I've seen in myself and in other people, it starts bringing a basic point to the human being of a piece of certainty. I've taken control. I found June or Mary or Mark as a mentor. I did that for me. I've now got to organize my thought. I can make an arrangement. I guarantee I'm going to speak every Friday at 3 o'clock. So I must make a schedule entry on Thursday to send an email over about the topics I want to talk about. I've got to organize my head, not chaotically, to talk. And probably that person is going to give me some good input. They won't necessarily give answers, but it's a catalyst. So huge advice. And by the way, it helps the mentee and the mentor. Helps both sides. It becomes almost a social thing. So that's my only advice, but it's great advice. I've seen it work.
I concur.
It's very important, very important. It's also good socially because the world is, in a little way, starts building different groups. We're reaching out to people. Hey, can I help you and talk to you? It might just be 20 minutes. Yes, please organize your thoughts and tell me what I can talk to you about. So I'm a massive fan of it. Actually, normally in startup world, but a time of panic or time of change is very, very important.
Okay.
I agree. Thank you very much.